Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pure Presence. Herein lies the peace of God with your hosts, Bill Free and Amy Torres, live, coming to you on a webinar and also by radio. Welcome. Hi, Amy.
Hey, Bill. Hey, everybody. This is the next phase of our partnership is moving from just radio into video. And it does make me feel like I can see you guys more. Interesting, not just audio, but video.
Yeah. And it's also pretty cool that we have an interactive approach to the radio show. We have the interactive approach to the topic, to the discussion, to the ideas that are being expressed. So now we can actually take questions. We can get involved with our audience real time. And Amy, you've been wanting to do this for months, and now it's happening.
Yeah. You guys, I kept telling Bill, I wanted to go live somehow. And then he's the tech master, and all those miracles flow through Bill. He makes it happen. So we're getting used to the technology. But this week, I think that we can actually get you in audio and not just typing in the chat room. We're really trying for that because this is a conversation. It's not just a dialogue between me and Bill. We really want you in on it. We want your experience to be shared. We like your questions, and we learn from you as well. So our topic.
I'm looking that we have 18 attendees. We have 18 people live.
Wonderful.
And it looks like on my other screen over here, it looks like the chat is disabled right now. I'm not sure why.
Oh,
so it might be something that we need to that I need to work on in the background. So let me just work on this, Amy, while you keep it going for just a minute. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's totally okay. So the topic is healing through relationships. It's a continuation of last week's webinar with Carol Howe, who really focuses on relationships and the forgiveness practice in A Course in Miracles. And this week we wanted to actually use the term that the Course uses, special relationships. You guys are always interested in that. Who isn't? And Carol had brought up the word mirror and the whole idea of what the Course says, which is that the world is an outside picture of an inward condition. And we start with that on the personal level. So I had shared with all of you and with Carol that when I was in my 30s, I believe, living in New York City, I would have this experience over and over again on the New York City subway, where I felt that all the people charging into the subway cars were inconsiderate. And it really bothered me years later when I was involved with the Course to think that that meant that I was inconsiderate, that it was just a direct, obvious reflection. It didn't make sense to me because I was a considerate person. So, I've delved into that over the years and at some point realized, it meant that I was inconsiderate of myself. And, there's a backstory to that it was very important in my family to be hyper aware of other people's feelings so that I didn't accidentally hurt them, to consider them, because someone in my family had committed suicide, very sensitive person. And it wasn't directly because her feelings were hurt, but that was kind of the myth in the family. So then to uncover that I was now not considering myself at all and that was not loving actually took me all the way back to realizing that I was not considering that the one who I thought I was, Amy, was not really who the Course was talking to. that one is the Son of God. And this is the depth that we're going to get into today as we talk about relationships, special relationships, the holy relationship, and how to use the mirror of the world.
Yeah. And, I got so I got so riveted on this idea of that we spoke with Carol Howe about last week, that I did a lot of contemplation, a lot of workbook, study, word studies in the course. And I came across, when you do a word study on the word mirror, and you realize that everything that you see, every experience that you have in perception as the person, even if it's coming, it looks like, well, why are they, I've never done anything like that. Like if you see an experience of someone being ugly to someone else, that kind of hits you in a spot, and you go, wow, that's a jerk, or why'd she do that? Or even when you watch a movie, I watched a movie last night that it reminded me. In fact, it even brought tears to my eyes when I was looking at the character in the movie, and it was reminding me of my own experience at 14 or 15 years old, and having this disconnect from my mother. And it brought tears to my eyes watching this movie, and I realized in that very moment I was using this experience, this experience that was a mirror, even though it was in a Hollywood movie and it's replays for millions of people. I was having an experience from it, and I was able to actually go into that character, which is me, and forgive it, and put it, and forgive me, and forgive the experience from seeming to be real, put it on the altar. And it actually has an effect on all of the sonship, the one mind of God that we share. But it also, for me, it has an immediate effect. I could feel the lightness coming in as I forgave the experience that young man had, and that young boy who was me had that similar experience, and I was reenacting that in my mind.
And Bill, you've shared this with me before, and even on the radio show, you've spoken about this. That one time you and I did some work around this, and I'd like everyone to feel encouraged that I know that Bill has done this before, and that it takes some repetitions to undo a perception, to place something on the altar over and over again. And each time, do you find that it's a less charged experience for you, Bill?
I wouldn't say that it's the same one that we worked with, Amy. It felt like it was coming from a completely different space. It felt like it was reminding me of a different experience. Like when I left home at 14 years old, I got on a Greyhound bus, and I took a 2-day trip to Las Vegas. And I moved out there. I moved out to Las Vegas, and I was like this scared little kid, I was really scared.
You were only
And
14?
I was 14 years old, and I moved into this, rooming house where your bathroom, your shower's down the hall, and you have a bed and a little table. But I was scared, man. I was really scared that I was on my own. And I remembered from watching this movie last night, I was feeling those feelings again. I was feeling those feelings of being scared and being separate from my physical source for the first time in my life. I felt, and it brought that back, and I could connect with the character in the movie in a different way. So this was different from the experiences that you and I have shared, that has found tremendous healing for me. And, going back to the mirror thing, every experience that we have in our life is for our healing. If someone says to us, you're guilty of doing something, or why did you do this, or did you know what so-and-so did? All of those scenarios are giving us an indication of the mind that wants us to be guilty of either doing something or judging somebody or some, and we're able to just clean it up in real time. We're able to look at the experience and transcend it, move beyond the words that were said, and take ownership of that for the one mind that we share. Because even though it came out of my brother or my sister's mouth, if it's in my awareness, it's in my perception. This is my world.
So, a couple of things. Yeah, I thought it was the same one because you mentioned your mother, but obviously we all have plenty of material from our parents. It doesn't have to be the same thing. And there's two things happening here for me. There's the desire to support people in knowing that the awakening process often involves repetition. And so we can get discouraged if we look in the mirror and feel like I'm still seeing a person and I still don't like who I see. And on the other hand, I don't want to indulge that. I also am very much with Bill on the possibility of instant spiritual experiences that add up to big shifts in perception. And that's why we call this show Pure Presence. Herein lies the peace of God. The pure presence piece is the non-duality piece that really, I think, is the supergraduate school of spirituality, where it's more and more clearly seen that we are just not the person. We are the presence unmixed with personal identity. And yet the Course gives us pathways through personal identity to come out of it. And now when I go back to the Course, what really stands out for me is all of the pure presence in it. I always knew it was there. But the process has a lot to do with giving everything to the Holy Spirit, choosing over and over again to move out of a special relationship that has grievances or simmering resentments that we don't want to be aware of, or even kind of like collective unconscious resentment or fear, just fear. Just look around the world and fear comes up very easily at the environmental situations, the political situations. So that is where there would be a big invitation in the Course to use the power of decision in the mind to go from fear to love. But there's often that feeling of, I want to do that, but how do I do that? Yes, and the workbook gives us a very clear step-by-step daily practice for a year to do that. And then coming again and again to that willingness to experience you with a capital Y, and to use everything you see out there, not to dissect your personality or somebody else's personality, but to start to be open to seeing the light. Yeah. Just to go beyond the personality altogether, just to allow, that person's irritating and that person's despicable and I feel shame. I still feel it after all these years, but none of that matters if I'm willing to ask the Holy Spirit to ask me to see the light and move into the whole light transfer experience. Yeah. That's well said, Amy. When I look at the benefits of realizing what the mirror really means, Ken Wapnick kind of drilled it into my head. Projection makes perception. Projection makes perception. So what I project out there is an inner experience of what's happening. It's an outer experience of what's happening in my mind. And if I can really use this idea that what I think what my brother did, even if I think it was atrocious, if it was horrible, it's the one mind that we share that wants me, person, Bill Free, to be guilty for what I'm judging my brother for, even if it was 50 years ago and the person's long past. And if I have judgment on that in my mind, and it'll be brought to me by some source, either by someone saying, oh man, and if we're talking about the Holocaust,
I'm getting very, very sensitive to all the information that's coming into my experience, so that I can help the sonship to forgive itself. And that's really something it's just dropped in recently. And I'm just going, oh yeah, I put that on the altar for Hitler. I put that on the altar for Trump. I put that on the altar for me. I put that on the altar for you. Whatever it is, I'm in service. It says the salvation of God's Son. That's all of us. There's nobody left out in that scenario. The salvation of God's Son is all the world is for. It's not about me. And when I take on the role of miracle worker, as light worker, as teacher of God, and I'm in service, which that's our vocation, Amy. We're both in service, and that's that's what we're here for, is to we're here to awaken and know thyself, and now we're sharing it with others.
Yeah. Guys, I want you to feel that Bill and I are having a conversation, and we're teaching what we want to learn to support our awakening process. And we want you to be part of that conversation. So we really do invite you, if you have questions or something to add, to participate through the chat bar or raise your hand. And picking up on what Bill said. So yeah, the ego, this is Course in Miracles speak. For you non-duality people, this is the way the Course puts it. And it's really helpful in a certain kind of way. The Course says that the ego made up this world, and that its method is projection makes perception through the five senses of the body. So the ego is the symbol of separation from God's mind, and healing through relationships is choosing God mind, or his representative, the Holy Spirit, to be in relationship, to constantly remind ourselves to bring everything bad and good to the Holy Spirit. And in cultivating that relationship, we feel infused with this greater identity-less identity. And then light just heals us, streams through us, and radiates from us, resulting in being a light worker or a miracle worker, as Bill is saying. So this is really what healing through relationships is. And then the ego has to see the world as a fearful, terrible place, but tell us that it's really a beautiful place. And if only we could save the world, the physical world. But the awakening process tells us, find out what you really are, and you will realize that the world is a movie. You don't have to save characters in a movie. But while you're very identified with those characters, you can do what Bill is saying. You can simply recognize that Hitler and Trump are perfect examples of the darkness and of fear, and then everything that springs from that, and choose again that is what we originally chose to be, is a dualistic split mind. And now we're choosing to heal the mind. That's it, through non-judgment.
Yeah. Well, there's a line, I'm just going to read one line in the totality of the kingdom that says, teach no one that he is what you would not want to be. Your brother is the mirror in which you see the image of yourself as long as perception lasts.
Would you read that again?
It says, teach no one that he is what you would not want to be. Your brother is the mirror in which you see the image of yourself as long as perception lasts.
Yeah.
And that's not to say to anyone that they're guilty. It's really to say to all of us that really know and have an understanding of the training, the teaching of the Course in Miracles and other non-dual paths. But the Course is kind of unique in that it gives the psychology behind the dualistic framework that we found ourselves in, and it gives us the tools that we need to release not only ourselves. I mean, we need our brother to release ourself if we have judgment anywhere. And we also are a collaborative experience, a collaborative venture where we're participating in the release of the mind that thought it was separate as a collective.
Yeah, and I want to mention, Bill, that we have somebody with a question. Floyd has his hand up, and maybe you can bring him in.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll do that. I'm going to bring Lloyd in. And Lloyd,
Floyd.
We haven't done this before, but we're going to invite you to come in and join us. Let's see how this works.
And while you're bringing him in, I just want to add, you guys, that as you continue to give yourselves over to the Holy Spirit, and I know many of you have been doing this for years, that we're never condoning bad behavior. First of all, it's always a perception in different cultures what good behavior and bad behavior is. But some things we all know in our heart of hearts is cruel or unacceptable, and we're never condoning that. So if you turn to Spirit, you will find that right action moves through you, whatever that is for you. It might be signing a petition. It might be praying for the whole world, that everyone has peace and happiness, like in the yogic chant, Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. It may be many things. You may go out there and, sign up for some campaign or organization. All of that will be fine. It will flow. Grace will move you in whatever direction is right for you on the level of the world. But what's most important is to start to grasp some of the metaphysics so that you're not just coming from yourself as a person, but you're allowing yourself to be guided.
Yeah. I don't know why Floyd wasn't able to come and join us. I clicked on his hand and it doesn't seem to, it just didn't work.
He was there, and it looks like he may have had to leave. He might have had to go back to work or something.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we we'll just carry on with the ideas that are presented. There's another idea that it goes along with the mirror of how we can really release ourselves by using the experience that seems to be happening in front of us, and that is that we can, when something is coming up in us that is disturbing our peace, and it seems to be happening from an issue that we have, from a situation that is just really disturbed our peace, we're able to use that experience, and that's the whole forgiveness process, where we give it to the Holy Spirit, where we put it on the altar, and that's also our release.
I was checking the chat, Bill, so I missed a little bit of what you were saying.
Okay. Do we have anything? The chat says, yeah, the chat's working just fine right now. And I'm not sure why the hand up thing didn't work.
Okay.
I would like for that to work.
Okay, guys. Well, if we're unable to call on you and actually get you here onto the video audio, then you can continue to use the chat.
Yeah. So the other part of this idea on healing through relationships is healing through the special relationships. And the biggest special relationship that we have is with this. It's with this. The biggest special relationship that we have is with the person identity that we think that we are. That's our biggest special relationship. We have special relationships that are in form. We have one with our significant other. We have one with people that we prefer, and those are kind of special relationships, but they're not nearly as subtle and seducing as this one.
Yeah, it all comes back to how we cherish the personal identity.
Yeah.
Of course, special relationships do mean people in your life, and especially those that you cherish, like your children or your pets or those who are closest to you, that it seems like you could let go of everything except them. And then everything else that we're making an idol of, like ice cream or cigarettes or or whatever it is, shopping, uh, anything can be a special relationship. But as Bill says, it all boils down to really desiring to play God and have a personal identity. And really, that's fine. If you take the judgment off of that, it's just a kind of amusing idea, like, hey, I wanted to put on mommy's clothes and play at being a grown-up. And it's okay. If you still feel an appetite for your personal life, you can do that and still use the course to match you at the level that you're at. The course is uncompromising, so it's taking you all the way, but it often takes years. It took me a few years to realize that A Course in Miracles is all about the mind. And unlike, Advaita Vedanta or non-duality, it uses the term God mind as synonymous with awakened mind or awareness, presence, consciousness. God mind is the same thing. And I find that very helpful because Muji spoke with me personally, and he talks about this to the whole Sangha, about consciousness in recovery. And he explained to me that pure consciousness, which is aware of itself, and that's reality with a capital R, has become mixed with this contracted state, this idea that I am a person. And now my recovery is unmixing them. And then just yesterday, Bill and I were on a webinar with Rupert Spira, and he was speaking about unmixing the personal consciousness. And this is an ancient practice, sometimes called neti neti, where you start to look around just like the early course lessons and say, I am not this, I am not that. I have assigned all the meaning to the objects in this room. I don't really understand what they are at all. Finally getting to lesson 5, which culminates in I'm never upset for the reason I think. And we usually think that we're upset because somebody else did something that if only they'd stop it, we'd feel better.
Yes. And when you get to the point where you're understanding this material, Advaita, the non-dual teachings of Muji or Rupert or the Course, you get to a place where you're recognizing the subtle little, when your peace is disturbed in any way, you get hypersensitive to the disturbance so fast that now you're able to look at the outside projection or look at the mirror that's reflecting itself back to you, and you're able to quickly pause instead of joining it, instead of calling it by name, putting a label or an old reference or a belief or a judgment on it. You're able to really look at it with the eyes of Christ, with your Christ vision. You're looking beyond the circumstances. You're transcending the physical form experience. You're in that same nanosecond, putting that in the light. When the illusion lays side by side next to truth, it dissolves back into the truth. So all you're doing in your mind, in the mind of Christ that you are, you're putting that illusion back into the light, where it dissolves itself back into the light. And then the mind that you share is a little more, has more light in it. You've displaced, you've removed just a little bit of darkness, a little bit of cloud got dissipated into the sunlight. And now you're experiencing more sunlight yourself.
That brings to mind a quote that I emailed some of you. In this world, you can become a spotless mirror in which the holiness of your Creator shines forth from you to all around you. You can reflect heaven here. And Carol Howe was talking to us about how when we literally look into a mirror, we don't argue with what we see. You know, I expect to see Amy and there she is. I don't have an argument with it. Like, no, you're really wearing a blue shirt and, you know, you in the mirror should have a blue shirt on too. Like, there's no argument. It's just what I see is what I get. And so Carol was pointing out that when we look out into the world, that we really can't argue with what we see. So generally, if we see anger, if we see disappointment, you know, if we see attack, then even if we're seeing it in somebody else, that's the mirror to tell us I'm still operating from belief in attack. I'm still operating from belief in inconsiderateness, just to go back to my very ordinary example. And if I can catch myself and just say, I'm still seeing inconsiderateness, so I'm still operating from fear, that would be the umbrella term that the Course uses, then I use that as an alarm clock to catch myself and say, Holy Spirit, I choose not to operate from fear anymore. Do something with me. Help me see this through your vision. You know, show me a better way. Something very simple and to the point. And then, you know, as Bill is saying, there comes this collapsing of darkness and this brightening to the extent that we can bear it, because that brightness can be glaring to eyes that are used to the dark. And so that seems to be a process in time. And that's how we can use our relationship with ourselves, that now every time we see the world through the eyesight of fear, through the ego perception, that we choose again and say, help me see this very same situation as a reflection, not a projection, a reflection of heavenly light.
Yeah, yes. And Amy, thank you for that description. That was very clear. And you know, this opens up for so many of us, and I'm speaking for me, and I know that you pointed out that we're really only speaking to ourselves when we have these conversations. This is just me speaking to me, and look at this beautiful me over there that looks like Amy Torres.
No, you look beautiful.
Thank you. Well, you know, I use the analogy of the iceberg, and if this triangle kind of represents an iceberg, it could be a heart if you turn it the other way, but an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is our consciousness with what we think we believe. Oh no, I don't believe that. No, I don't believe in guilt. I don't, or I don't. I'm not a thief, or I'm not dishonest, or I'm not like Hitler. Well, that's true, but the ego that wants me dead, and it goes from vicious to from suspicious to vicious, and once it's raised the experience of time and space and the belief of being separate to doubt, then the ego no longer calls itself your friend. It really becomes this experience that you want to get rid of. And that stuff that's under the water as the iceberg, you can't see all those beliefs that the ego wants me to be responsible for, be guilty for. So if I see something that's happening out there and it seems like it's somebody else that's guilty, my ego wants me to be guilty for it. And this is my way of cleaning it up. If I see it out there, I know that I'm not even getting a charge on it, but if I have the perception of it and I can put it on the altar for my brother, I've put it on the altar for that buried stockpile of beliefs that the ego would hold against me.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is the collective ego mind. It does range from suspicious to vicious, as the course says, and that does include that we have to accept that every fragment of the ego mind does have a little Hitler in it. It does. We can't have it both ways.
Yep.
If we've chosen to be separate from God, then you better look at your little mini Hitler and I better look at mine so that we can let it go.
Yeah.
Just go,
Well,
oh, that comes
if
with
anybody,
but not to feel guilty about it, to use it to change your mind.
yes, yes,
Otherwise you're reinforcing it through guilt. Oh, what a horrible person I am. That's not
yeah, or I'm so happy, I'm so glad I'm not like her.
exactly
I am so grateful that I'm not like that asshole.
right.
You
That's
know, and that's like, oh, I just put it out there. It's not ill. It's not because I'm self righteous. So you have to be watchful of that one as well.
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Now, guys, I'm not seeing the chat. I see you're here. I see your names, and yet somehow I'm not accessing the chat. So, Bill, maybe you can sort
Well,
that
it looks to me like the chat is working. I don't see anybody using it.
out. Okay. All right,
I
guys.
can.
You want us to just go on?
Yeah, I think we just. It's actually time for a station break, so I'm going to give us a station break real quick, and we'll be back in about a minute. So, you guys, we're going to do a little station break identification for Unity Online Radio, and we'll be right back. This program is brought to you by the Teachers of God Foundation and Amy Torres, ACIM.com. Both of these organizations have programs to support you in the transformation and awakening experience. The Teachers of God Foundation has the 40-day program that is free, the Guide to 365, ACIM 365, and Living in Purpose 6-month mastery course. Amy Torres has her well-known Working the Workbook course, her new intuitive course, and she does private sessions by appointment. Thank you for joining with us today on this webinar. And now back to Bill and Amy. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Yay! Well, that was our little commercial break. But coming back to the iceberg experience, the idea that I really like about this mirroring for me, Amy, is that, that no longer am I going to just look at the experiences of the world as something that is happening to me. No longer am I going to be looking at commentary. Like if somebody asks me a question that like catches me off guard and says, that's a little out of line, isn't it? Or how could you say something like that? It's not, it used to be that my mind would say, how could they say something like that? Or why would that person say that? That was like crazy. But if you look at it as an opportunity of this idea that's being presented to me by my brother or by my sister is some buried belief that I can't see. Maybe it happened when I was a baby. Maybe it happened in another lifetime. I don't know. Because, the Course does say in one movie, I was the one murdered. In the other movie, I was the one who murdered. So it could be that I came in consciousness and I brought in a big Santa Claus bag of ugly stuff, that I can just gently look at and transcend it, put it on the altar for all time, because the miracle collapses events in all dimensions of belief, all dimensions of time. Yeah. So this is really good news for us. And we don't have to talk about it. We just have to be very clear to say, oh, wow, look at that, look at that, look at that. But we don't verbalize it. We just do the work. We're miracle workers. We're the light that has come home.
Sometimes, Bill, you get so filled with light that I just get quiet. I literally felt like my crown chakra just starting to elevate while you were talking.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It's energetic, you know. It goes beyond the words that you're saying for sure.
Hmm.
And then I don't remember a word that you said. I'm just totally absorbed. I remember you saying, you know, like something to the effect that everything ugly that we see as ugly can be used as an opportunity. And I just
Yeah.
started to take off.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I heard somebody say something to my wife about something. Would you do this or would you do that? And that came into my consciousness as a question. And rather than following the bunny trail of where did that question come from or why, I allowed myself to say, there's that question is buried in there. And this is my opportunity to put it on the altar. I don't need to have any more questions. I just need to notice that something was that my ego or the ego that I consider to that is the split mind where I live, it wants to accuse me or a brother of something that I can now just eradicate. I can just put it on the altar, put it in the sunlight, and watch it dissolve into the nothingness that it came from.
Yes. You know, usually after the break, we do a Q&A, and I was hoping that you guys would have a question in the chat or raise your hand, but maybe you are. And we apologize if somehow you're talking to us and we don't see it. Oh,
We
here's
have one. We have one here. It says, "Hi, Amy and Bill. Can you speak about boundaries in relationships?"
Oh, that's from Rajani. Thank you, Rajani, because that's one of my favorite topics. I love that. Well, okay.
You go first.
Okay. Um, so my background is that I came to realize I was very much a love addict and codependent. And those two things go hand in hand. They basically indicate that I just didn't receive enough parenting or enough nurture from my parents, which is very common because our parents are not prepared to be parents. Nobody is taught how to be a good parent, and so I was like a thirsty plant that didn't get enough water and didn't get enough sunlight. Therefore, no boundaries. You know, the way that I felt secure in human relationships was that if I was needed, then I felt secure. So everything was conditional. And in fact, I felt more comfortable in a dependent relationship where somebody needed me and I was not getting my needs met, because then I had this false security that they wouldn't go anywhere, and learning to build boundaries. So if people were disrespectful to me at first, I couldn't even tell. It took a long time for me to even recognize what that was. And I've learned that boundaries are super helpful because they mean that we have faith that everybody else has God within them. So when we feel that people need us too much, to an extent that now we're depleted and we're stretched too thin and we're exhausted, and we're feeling guilty if we don't give them everything they're asking for. It's a tremendous shift in perception to realize they have God within them, and we don't have to be the mini God that meets all their needs or does everything they say or gets walked all over. And that's what I'm taking from your question. If there's something more specific, please put it in the chat. And if you need an example of how to set a boundary, maybe we can get into that too. Do you want to add?
Well, I consider Amy to be the expert on these kinds of questions and these kinds of matters. And also at the same time, I do have a point of view on this. And my feeling about boundaries in relationships, that can be a pretty broad um, experience. For it could mean anything, but for me, boundaries are allowing my partner, first of all, to be free. I don't hold my partner to the belief, the made up structure that I think the relationship is supposed to be. I'm open to the relationship being different next month than it was last month, and next year than it is this year. Why? Because I'm here in living in the spontaneity of guidance. I'm living in the I want to experience trust. And if I'm going to and also freedom. I am freeing myself from the tyranny of believing that I am this limited self in a body form. So in that idea, I want to be free. And it doesn't mean that in relationship, that I want multiple partners. I don't. I'm monogamous, and my wife is that way, and that's just what works for us. But in boundaries of experience, first of all, it really depends on where you are in your journey. You really want to take these ideas that we're talking about today, the mirror. Your partner in relationship is your most valuable asset to awakening, because they're going to show you all the stuff, the intimate stuff, the stuff that really gets under your skin as a person and identifies you as a person. And you're going to be able to look at that with the Holy Spirit and remove the personal self identity so that you have a higher state of being in your experience. And the other thing is, when you I'm almost finished, Amy. If you have, if your partner is making you feel guilty, you have probably put the vibration out that you feel guilty, and you're getting a reflection of that. And so the first place to handle that is not verbally, like you know better than to make me guilty. The first place to handle that is to say, oh, wow, I am seeing a reflection of guilt. I'm going to put my guilt and my brother's guilt on the altar, and I'm going to clean it up for both of us. And based on that, you may see some residue of something coming a little bit later, but that idea is dying its own belief. You're going to be letting that go.
Yeah, there's a lot more that we could say about this subject, and
Yes.
we're happy to get into it, maybe devote a show to it. But we have another question. So I'd love to be able to speak to Martin's question, which is perhaps we could speak about our special relationships with our bodies and the appearance of illness and its impact. That's worthy of a whole show too, Martin, but we can touch on it right now. Do you want to jump into that one first, Bill?
I will. I'd be happy to. The special relationship, the sickness, the special relationship of the body is,
and the appearance of illness
and the appearance of illness. The body is neutral. Number one, the body is only an object manifestation of the mind that believes that it's separate. So sickness, in the Course, sickness is a defense against the truth, means that the appearance, if I have a body situation or illness or some physical thing that's happening, my attention is going to the body right away. And the mind training and the thing that we want to do so that we don't make the body real is we want to look at that as this is a defense against the truth. And even though you're going to service the body, you're going to take medicine. You still go to the doctor as you're guided to go to a doctor. You're still going to take pills, but In your mind, you're going to forgive the mind that believes that this is real, or that even the body or the person is real. And you're just going to forgive it just like you would, an identity of guilt, or the identity of that you did something wrong. It's the same thing. You just forgive it, but then you probably take the pill too.
So, Martin, this too is a subject near and dear to my heart, the appearance of illness. And I've thought about this for many years. And in fact, last week, I went over to the Foundation for A Course in Miracles because they had a full-day workshop that they called Life as a Body, a Chronic Illness. And I really enjoyed the title of that workshop, Life as a Body, a Chronic Illness, because think about it. The ego made the body to further our belief in separation. Why would the body be healthy? It cannot be healthy. It's the symbol of a split mind. So if we realize that from the ego perspective, the ego is always giving us a setup. The setup of the body is that it's not going to be perfectly healthy. And if it was, it would only be to distract us and make us think that we're doing spirituality right, for instance. So some people get lucky and they have perfect health, but most of us do not. Most of us are coping with something because the body is material and matter degrades. So when we start to look at that with more of a sense of humor and to take the fear out of it that, oh my God, something's going wrong with my body. Well, that's only to be expected. And then it's all about attitude. It's all about just asking the Holy Spirit to help us see the situation with the body, if it happens to be physical illness, in another way, in a way that somehow is for the highest good of all. Even, reassuring people who have problems with their body that it's okay. And Cheryl Valentine, a course teacher who died of a brain tumor, she journaled about that through the death process. And my God, she was so inspiring. As far as I could tell, she lived the course through the entire transition. And it was amazing, different approach to how you could view the death of the body or illness in the body. And Bill, there was something you said that I wanted to appreciate. Something you said about the body that, well, you said it's a neutral thing, which it absolutely is. It has no actual life to it, the body. So the thing is, I wouldn't want you to think that you can measure your spiritual evolvement by the health in the body. You cannot, because there's a larger picture, like a big jigsaw puzzle, and illness in the body might be very inspiring or healing to another aspect of the mind. Or in some way to your own unfolding. But you don't have to get sick to unfold.
Well, and if the body's not even real, and the sickness or the symptom is drawing our attention to it, then, I mean, I feel that this is why, Amy, you and I are so all in, fully drawn to Muji and also Rupert Spira, because they help us not only understand non-duality in its purest form or its purest essence, they help us to understand the gateway, the doorway, and the space of living in the experience of presence, in the experience of awareness that the Course speaks to that. If you look at workbook lesson 124 and paragraph 8, I just came across this morning, and I'm just going, oh, wow, the Course teaches you in this workbook lesson to practice awareness. It tells you to practice awareness in that workbook lesson. And I am as God created me is it's the most used idea in the whole Course in Miracles, which in my mind, Jesus is always wanting to point us to your spirit. Be spirit and see everything from there and allow it to just be what it is. It's a passing cloud. It's not the truth of you. and it's not your identity. Amy?
Yeah, I'm just noticing that we're close to the end and it might be time for the peace of God experience.
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
That
Yes,
was my
thank you.
5 minute sign.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, that's I think it's just perfect to go into the peace of God experience. Awesome.
Okay. I think I'm going to read you guys a quote first so that you have a reference point for the Christ in you and what this experience that Bill is talking about, how the body will be perceived while we are still finishing off this dream. From my yoga background, I've learned that the body becomes felt as vibration. And this is very different than the very dense flesh and blood experience we've been having of the body up till now. So in chapter 24, section 5, the Christ in you, Jesus says, identify with Christ. And what has he that you have not? He is your eyes, your ears, your hands, your feet. How gentle are the sights he sees, the sounds he hears. How beautiful his hand that holds his brother's, and how lovingly he walks beside him, showing him what can be seen and heard, and where he will see nothing and there is no sound to hear. So let's now just get very quiet. If you can, close your eyes. That will bring you inward. And I'm going to read you lesson 304 as an experience. So let it permeate you. Don't just hear it with your ears. Let not my world obscure the sight of Christ. I can obscure my holy sight if I intrude my world upon it. Nor can I behold the holy sights Christ looks upon, unless it is his vision that I use. Perception is a mirror, not a fact. And what I look on is my state of mind reflected outward. I would bless the world by looking on it through the eyes of Christ. And I will look upon the certain signs that all my sins have been forgiven me. You lead me from the darkness to the light, from sin to holiness. Let me forgive, and thus receive salvation for the world. It is your gift, my Father, given me to offer to your Holy Son, that he may find again the memory of you and of your Son as you created him.
Hmm.
Just let yourself feel any tingling, buzzing, rising, dissolving. Allow that. It's okay. You're turning into a sponge. You're allowing the body to be porous, to be used to absorb light.
Hmm.
And then you'll just naturally brighten your presence and realize that you are that presence and be a radiance in the world. That's healing through relationship.
And the peace of God. Herein lies the peace of God. This is pure presence. Thank you all for joining us on our debut as a webinar show. And also, this is Pure Presence, Herein Lies the Peace of God, the radio show. And we'll see you all next week.
Love you. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye-bye. Bye, Amy. I love
Bye,
you.
Bill. Love you.